evening and welcome to the TooFatLardies Oddcast. Today we've left the studio behind, and as I'm sure you can tell by the throaty roar of the engine of Lardmobile 5, we're on the road again.
We're leaving everything behind, I think. Solar system.
We're on a road trip heading due south from Lard Island with a sat-nav set for Southampton, England. And the day of Lard, that is, come and have a go if you think you're Lard enough. And on the road with me are the Jake and Elwood of wargaming, Richard Clark and Nick Skinner. Gentlemen, as we're rolling down the coast, welcome to the Oddcast.
Keep that Sidney moving.
Sydney's moving.
As we're doing that, we've narrowly avoided a collision with about 3 vehicles, but I'll try not to scream. So how are you both doing?
Yeah, good. Yeah, very good. Thank you. Jake and Elwood. I just wonder when you're going to run out of these ridiculous names.
I'm working hard. Google is helping me with that significantly.
Good.
So what have we all been up to since the last time we spoke? What have you been doing?
Painting. I've been doing a lot of naked people.
Naked painting.
Yeah. Ancients, a lot of ancients, but I've actually been having a break this week from my ancients, although I did do about 8 nude blokes yesterday. I've been painting some stuff for a sharp practice event in Amsterdam at the end of this month, and I said I was going to have an Austrian army, and I hadn't got one, so I went and bought all the figures and I painted it this week, which has been quite nice to have a break from painting people's genitals to spending time painting some Napoleonic uniforms. A lot more time consuming, but I'm really pleased with the results. I've got a nice new army, and I've done right the way down to doing a deployment point. I found in my spares box this little border post with a double-headed eagle on it, and I found a woman with a little basket of apples, trying to sell them, and I got a little Austrian officer with his walking stick strolling along, and a few chickens and bits and pieces. So I made a lovely little vignette for a deployment point, and I bought some Celtic war dogs. And when I did the research into it, Celtic war dogs are referred to only in references much earlier than Caesar, and so I haven't used them. So I painted up one as a great big hound to go with my Austrian Landwehr officer, which I'm quite pleased with. So I've had a lot of fun painting up that army this week. It's been quite a treat to do something totally different.
Can you remember where you got your Celtic war dogs from, Rick?
Yeah, I can actually. It was a warlord, and they're nice because they're not they're not the plastic ones they do in the SPQR set. They're the metal ones that they did in the Hail Caesar set. And I don't know what they are. They're sort of bloodhoundy, great big lumbering beasts, which are quite fun. They don't look like sort of the new plastic SPQR ones. Look a bit sort of wolf-like, Alsatian-like, which wasn't what I was after. I wanted this Austrian officer to have a dog like Schnorbitz, for those that remember, a dog with real character. And I did think after I'd done it, I should have sculpted it with one of those little barrels round his neck, like the mountain dogs, because that would have been pretty easy to do with green stuff. I might go back and have a go with that. But yeah, so that's what I've been doing. Really enjoyed that. Got a pile of stuff through the post, some 10mm buildings for O Group. Paul Edwards of Sabotaged very kindly with a 3, because he's really clever, printed me off a load of 10mm buildings, which are going to be great fun, because what I'm doing is I'm going to do my terrain, building terrain on little wooden bases, so you'll have like 4, 5, 6 houses on each base. So modular is the word I'm looking for. So that's been keeping me busy, as well as the usual rule development stuff. What about you, Nick?
I've finally completed my Blitzkrieg Cromwells. The Cromwells I was doing, finished those off at last. Really pleased with them. 1/48 resin casts, lots of people have trouble with Blitzkrieg. They say the paint doesn't adhere to it very well. I've never had that trouble.
I haven't had that.
No, I've never had that, but I've seen lots of people saying that whatever, I don't know what paint they use, but for some reason it doesn't adhere to the resin.
Do you wash yours in the sink?
I just put them. I just dangle them in the sink with a bit of fairy liquid.
Right.
Rinse them out, dry them off, pat them dry.
See, I've never done that. I've just sprayed undercoat straight on.
Yeah.
And sometimes the undercoat doesn't adhere perfectly. Well, just give another coat.
Well, I find that Halford's Universal Grey Primer, sticks to anything.
Yeah.
It's quite thick. But we're doing armour, that's fine, isn't it?
Do you wash metal figures? Do you bother washing metal figures?
No, I never wash metal figures.
I don't either, I just thought I'd ask.
Yeah, what a waste of
Who washes metal figures? If you wash your metal figures, Sidney would like to hear from you. Please emailing at completelunatic@TooFatLardies.co.uk. So I finished those. I'm really pleased with them. One of the things I'm really pleased about them more than anything else is I tried to have a go at some of that burlap camo, the kind of camouflage netting the British put on their tanks towards the ends of the war. And I did that with a combination of green stuff principally, and just sort of pricking it up and making it look quite sort of spiky and having that kind of that design. It's kind of, what do they have on it? Like thin strips, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm really quite pleased with that. It looks pretty good. But I've discovered, I think, an even better way of doing it. Are you coughing all right there? Should we be worried?
I am. My temperature's not too bad now.
Right. How was Milan? So anyway,
my new spring collection was well received.
I was in the Indian restaurant in my village the other day. And after the meal, they brought out these, they bring out the lovely hand towels and the heated hand towels to clean your face with.
Yeah.
I was cleaning my lovely face with this lovely hand towel, and I suddenly realised that if I sprayed this could be fantastic burlap camo to go on top of a tank. So I quickly grabbed all the hand towels from the table that my family were on, and I'm waiting now to have a go and turn that into a bit of camouflage netting, because it's a kind of, it's a cheap flannel.
Right.
Basically.
Well, it would be in your village.
And I think it will be, obviously after I've washed it, go through.
Yeah, right.
And then sprayed it with an undercoat of black and a bit of PVA. I think it looked really good.
Will you cut it up? So
yeah. Well, otherwise it would be, equivalent of 35-foot square or something.
Yeah, fine. I mean, would you cut it into those little burlap strips?
No.
Right.
I think the individual nodules, I'm not sure if it would pass as burlap, but it would definitely pass as camouflage netting. And I think that might be really quite worth a try. So I've got that on my painting table, as it were. Not that I have a painting table, but ready to go for next time round. And the other thing I finished off at the same time, I've got some rather nice universal carriers from the same man who did your 10mm buildings. I think they've done a really good job on these. Just some universal carriers, 1/48. Again, they're looking really quite splendid and nice. One of them didn't print very well. It's a failed print, but I said to Paul, send that over as well. And because it's got a big bit missing out the front, just turned it into a destroyed vehicle with a big plume of black smoke coming out the front. Looks super as a terrain piece.
Yeah. And stuff like that, again, we've talked about it before, really enhances the look of the table, makes it feel more plausible, and draws the gamer into the story of the scenario, doesn't it? What I did for camouflage when I did my 150th Corgi, what tanks were they?
Cromwells,
was I used tea leaves.
A lot of people do that.
To create the camouflage netting, which seemed to work fairly well. Mix it with PVA, paint it on. I can't remember what I painted it on now. I mean, I think I must have put some material on there first of all. I didn't get it from an Indian restaurant. I know that, but and the tea leaves give a pretty good effect. Yeah.
A lot of people buy that sort of leaf scatter, don't they? But I think when I used that, the leaves are they're little seedling sort of things, and they don't really look they kind of look superficially nice, and then they look completely ludicrously out of scale.
Yeah.
Whereas your tea leaves, I think they work pretty well.
Well, there's two. My wife drinks a South African tea called Rooibos Red Bush, and that has got large leaves.
Yeah.
But my daughter drinks a Yorkshire tea, which has got very small leaves. And betwixt and between the both of them, you can kind of mix up almost anything you want, really, in terms of.
The Yorkshire tea, obviously, infinitely superior to any other teas.
Well, I don't drink tea, as we know, so I would throw them all in the bin.
Tell me, Sid, which part of Yorkshire is the tea growing region?
The tea plantations of Huddersfield are well known down that way.
Or are we being misled by some clever marketing?
Absolutely.
Well, who knows? Maybe so. So that's good. So I've been doing more French cavalry, which is,
What period, Sid?
this is all for 1688.
Right.
So it's about 7th or 8th.
Heavens to Murgatroyd.
Heavens to Murgatroyd.
The ghost of 1688.
That's right. So about 7 or 8 units in now, but we're almost done those, so that's good.
These are ones we've seen on Twitter.
Yeah, I've got quite a bit more to put up there, but since I try and put things up with a little bit of a story, a little bit of a backlog.
I've heard that about you.
Yeah, and I've been doing quite a bit of reading, actually. I sort of, as people might know, we've come to the end. Deep Fried Lard takes place in June this year, and I was chatting to Derek, who was... Derek, who's the host of Deep Fried Lard. And I talked to him about it last year, that the place where the Musselburgh Rugby Club is actually on the site of a battlefield, or the start of a battlefield, the Battle of Pinkie in 1547, I think it is. So
Yeah. Is that where the battlefield was?
Yeah, so that's where the Scotch camp was, and they advanced from there to just about where the Premier Inn is, which was the main battle line. So I've bought a couple of books about it and been finding out a lot about what is actually a very interesting campaign. And I was chatting with Derek about it, and that's something which I think we'll probably return to in future podcasts. Was hoping one year to maybe do something in 10mm for the battle list. The forces are not too bad, but I think in 10mm they'd look very good. So maybe a bit more about that in a future podcast once I've finished the reading. But there's a couple of very good books which I've found about that campaign in general, and a really confusing sort of situation in the wars which were taking place. I hadn't realised there were so many wars which were going on within the border region and just south of Edinburgh in the 1530s, 1540s and 1550s.
Been to Musselburgh Rugby Club, mate. They'll fight anyone.
Exactly. Quite so. So that's been me. And but you went down just to Bristol, the other end of the country, the other weekend, Rich.
Not just Bristol, mate. Big Bristol.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, Bristol Independent Gamers in Bristol.
Thank you.
That's
and
right.
what did you do?
Well, we had a Lardy Games day there called Winter Wonder Lard, and it was smashing. It was a really great day, mate. It was really great fun. I ran infamy twice, so it was infamy. We ran that twice, once in the morning, once in the afternoon. Had loads of other games on there: Bag the Hun, Water Tanker, Iron Bean Shotmum, Chain of Command, Dux Britanniarum, Sharp Practice, and probably some, Kiss Me Hardy, of course. Some great looking games. The only frustrating thing was that I was so busy running infamy was that I never got a chance to go and have a look at any of the other games or talk to anybody. I was hoping to have some audio from people talking about what fun they'd had. But it was a great day, and we went for a fabulous curry in the evening. Great restaurant. If you're ever in Bristol, restaurant called The Curry House. Simple name, but it does what it says on the tin. It was really good fun and a really, really great time. So that was brilliant. Yeah, had a great time there, and that was just last weekend. Great facilities at Bristol Independent Gamers, and we took the whole of the ground floor packed with lardies. I think there are about 50-60 people there, and many thanks to David Hunter for his efforts in organising that, because it really was a smashing do that everybody enjoyed.
It looked a great event. I couldn't go Saturday, I had to change my plans, but the games that I saw, the photos that I saw, the standard of the games is really high.
Yeah, very
good looking games. The terrain was fantastic. I think James Morris was there, wasn't he?
James
with his Crete game.
Did his Crete game, the Chania Gate, which sounds to me like an Indian restaurant, if I'm honest.
But it's a lovely looking game.
It was a lovely looking game, yeah, that's right. You go down to Chania Gate tonight, have a ruby. It's plausible, isn't it?
It is plausible, completely.
Yeah. But when you got there, it would be Greek.
Nice.
It's all Greek to us.
It is all Greek to us, indeed, yeah.
So you had gaming last weekend? You had gaming this weekend? And of course, well, this is going out early March.
Yeah, middle of the week.
2020.
Middle of the week I was gaming with the army as well, so it's just been a week of wild gaming.
So when people are listening to this in a year's time, if we still have a world civilization in a year's time, they'll be thinking, were those the last gaming events?
Was that the last days of civilization?
Were those the last days of the human species?
Absolutely.
Was that what they were doing in early March 2020?
Well,
who do you think will be listening if human civilization? Do you think it'll be those Smash robots? Because
it's those and the clangers.
Yeah.
They'll be receiving this podcast later.
Then they smash them with their metal knives.
It's good, isn't it?
That'd be great.
We get to play a real live game of Pandemic.
Which we do. As long as Sid doesn't come back as a zombie.
Well, I've no plans to come back as a zombie because.
So what do you reckon then? Coronavirus. Now, when I was a lad, Corona was a brand of soft drink. Now, that was actually so revolting you thought you were going to die.
Yeah.
Now it actually is a life-threatening virus named after a brand of 1970s soft drinks. That is remarkable. What do we reckon? People are saying, are they going to be cancelling events? Are they going to be doing this? Well, at the moment, somebody pointed out that as many people have died in the UK of it as died in Michael Barrymore's swimming pool. But well, I wasn't quite sure the relevance of that remark. But actually, it does seem that...
might not live that long because that big truck is about to kill us anyway.
Yeah, it is. It does seem that, are we going to be looking at event cancellation? I read the newspaper this morning before I left, and they were saying that the government's frontline policy is going to be A, to shut schools, B, to get people to work from home, and C, to stop events taking place where large numbers of people are going to mix together. Now, I know, for example, that some of the Six Nations rugby matches have been cancelled. Scottish ladies, their match has been cancelled, and I think England-Italy has been cancelled. But is that going to extend further? What do you think?
I think it's inevitable. we're already encountering it, aren't we? Where events, either commercial events or open public events, are being curtailed. The London Book Show was cancelled last week.
That wasn't the organisers, though, was it? That was,
I know we've had reassurances from certain shows.
Yeah.
And Salute is going ahead at the moment.
I had an interesting email yesterday from one of the Wargame shows, which was sent out to people who were going there as traders. So I'm not sure whether they want it to be public yet, but they were basically saying, look, here are our contingency plans if it doesn't go ahead. Interesting to see that coming through, because to be honest with you, I've been going on my merry business, not really even thinking about it. My wife went to the shops the other day and said, where's all the toilet roll gone? What's going on? People seem to be deciding that if they get coronavirus, the way to cure it is going to be to go to the toilet a lot.
Cover themselves in toilet.
That's right.
Eat lots of pasta.
Eat lots of pasta.
Pasta seems to have disappeared.
And rice. That's it. Oh my God, I've got coronavirus. Let's have a risotto. Some of it seems to be a trifle absurd to me, but at the same time, in the last 3 days, we've seen an additional over 100 additional cases, whereas in the previous 3 days we were looking at 20 odd different new cases. So there's clearly something going on.
So the podcast ages well or badly at this point, doesn't it? Because maybe it all blows over and we're worrying about nothing, or maybe it really is a dreadfully serious.
Well, if it is, then maybe nobody's left to call us wrong.
I think probably one of the things, if you're organising events, which is difficult, is thinking, well, what's done in the context of what's proportionate, and that's really partly a liability thing, isn't it? If you're running a big event, you've got to be trying to be proportionate in accordance with what else is happening at the time.
Why do people drive like that?
We are just watching a near collision as I'm talking.
I'd just like to stress that's nothing to do with my driving.
No.
I identified it and held back.
Unless they were trying to flee out of your way, they could see you coming.
They could see me
There's a
about to
panicking
sneeze.
route ahead of us. So it's difficult, isn't it? Because liability-wise, with public insurance, organisers are always going to err on the side of caution.
Yeah,
but at the
absolutely.
same time, that does sometimes seem a bit of an overreaction when there's only, as you say, Rich, 2 people have died in the UK at this point.
And both of them over 70 and with other medical issues or pre-existing conditions.
But I'm sure people listening will have their own experiences of what's going on in their own workplaces and how movements are being restricted, and how events and where people come together. Any event that brings people together from around your community has got to be under question.
Yeah, well, worrying
Tragically.
times.
Says us on the way to an event that brings people together from around our community.
And then again, but we do know that the organisers, i.e. Mark, has taken steps to minimise the risk for those that are attending by asking us to wear hazmat suits and face masks. But he has. I mean, he's taken some steps to try and make it less likely that we contaminate each other.
Yeah.
So we shall see whether we return from Southampton contaminated or not.
Well, I'm banking on the idea that if you flush your system with enough alcohol.
Well, that normally works. If you get enough booze through your system, illnesses don't happen.
So alcohol, all these washes that apparently combat the disease are alcohol based.
They are.
So if I wash myself in alcohol
internally, and externally,
maybe pour yourself a beer over your head just in case. Who knows?
Something like that.
Or probably that'll just happen in the Spitfire pub normally.
This is a bit worrying.
We're in a queue of traffic.
Not in a queue, we're at a standstill.
Well, and as we're at a standstill, it's a little bit like sitting on a sofa, and also a little bit like going into your workshop. And at that point, maybe it's a good time for us to stop, look around, and think about what's been in our workshop on the What's in the Workshop segment.
Well, yeah. Vroom, vroom. Right, I'll do the sound effects. Right, yeah. Right. Oh, and here we are in the workshop. Oh, what a mess it is in here. No, we're not in the workshop, Sid. We're in the car. But
we're on the car.
Yeah.
But there's another workshop section in there.
A mobile workshop.
No.
So do we have anything in the What's in the Workshop, best bit on the bench type things?
What's in the workshop? Figures. Perry miniature Austrian Jaegers. Really chuffed with them. Are they the best bit on the bench? Probably not, because we've all got Perry miniatures. I'm not really telling anybody anything new. Foundry, a Bohemian Landwehr. Oh, beautiful figures. I mean, beautiful figures, lovely figures. No, kind of Paul Edwards 3D printed buildings I've got. Well, you can't win it every week, Paul. You can't win it every week, mate. They are lovely, but so no, I've really not got anything that would be the best bit on the bench.
What about you, Nick?
What have I got?
Although actually, if we hadn't had Paul Edwards 3D printed stuff before, his 10mm 3D printed buildings would be the best bit on the bench, because they're bloody magic. They're really good.
They wouldn't do that. No, it wouldn't, because his Ram Kangaroo that he printed for me would be the best bit on the bench instead, which is very nice. So for me, Sidney, I've got a couple of things, I guess. I got hold of some deep. Now, I've got to get this right. Deep Cut Studios, isn't it?
Yes.
I keep calling it something else.
Yes.
Deep Cut Studios. I don't know if you see, they do these roll-out mouse mat roads.
Oh, the ones that roll out and
roll out
like
a mouse mat. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're great for your Romans, Rich, because they're dead straight, mate. They're just a big road.
Well,
6 foot dead straight road.
Yeah, that's the thing that has put me off them.
Well, that would put me off as well. But it's got each. So you buy. So I've got 3 of these. I wanted to try them out. So I've got the cobbled road, I've got the country road, the John Denver road, and I've got and I've got the river. And I know they're straight, but each straight section, so it's 6 foot of straight section, and each in each box you have two semicircles of semicircle that you can then cut to make your bends. Yeah,
that's interesting, because I was going to ask you, can you cut?
Yes, you can cut it. Yeah, you can
whatever.
cut it to whatever you like. Of course, once you've cut it, I guess you've you've cut it and you can't reassemble it. I'm really interested to know how practical it is, to be truthful. I wanted to get it for some cobble. I really want the cobbled roads to get our urban layouts a bit more looking.
So I see what they're doing. They give you a semicircle of road, which of course you can cut into two 90-degree turns, or four 45-degree turns, or 8 22.5-degree turns.
That's them.
You've got a lot of flexibility. And of course, with a straight section, what you could do is take the last. I suppose you could cut that into 18-inch sections and take the last foot of it and do that at different angles. You'd have the road going off at a more sort of angular bend rather than a curve.
But all of those are fairly geometric, aren't they, in the way that they bend and move?
They are.
But I thought I'd give it a go.
Can you cut it with like dressmaking, high quality scissors?
You can cut it with low quality scissors as well if you want. That will also work. And I just wanted to give it a go. I'm not entirely convinced by it. I'm on a bit of a quest to find the perfect wargaming road.
What is your quest?
Yes, my quest is the road. The yellow brick road of wargaming.
Right.
Because I haven't yet found a road that I really like.
No.
I see other people have really nice roads, and I saw one guy who was at Big Wonderland last week, who had a fantastic looking road for
the Spanish Civil War road.
Game.
That road I coveted, and I talked to him about it actually, and he got it years ago, and he can't remember how it was made or where he got it or this, that and the other, but it was a fabulous, it was a beautiful piece of road. It really was good. Really
talk us through the road. What was so wonderful about it?
It was road-like and wonderful, mate. It was
a little bit raised up.
It was raised. It was raised.
Was it latexy?
So it was not like latexy at all. It was almost made on a sort of foam core basis. Okay. So it was about as thick as a quarter of an inch. And it was chamfered at the edges, and where the road had been done, the road meandered a bit rather than being perfectly straight.
It had ruts.
And it had lots of very pronounced ruts in it, which really looked, and rocks and bits and pieces. And for a Spanish game, it looked fabulous.
And what I liked about it, the bit that I noticed, was that where the road ended, it had like an end piece that went that was chamfered down.
Funnily enough,
into the terrain.
I spoke to the guy about that, and whose name has gone out of my mind. I do apologise because I know his name. But I did speak to him about that, and I said, I really like that. He said, yeah, I did that. I cut a bit off and then sanded it down. Well, it really worked. It was brilliant. And so where you had a little turning into a field, you had a section about 2.5-3 inches long, which then went down a little slope. But it really looked a bit good. It was really good. Really
makes the difference.
So I picked up that deep. Let me get it right again.
Deep cut
road, but to be truthful, it wouldn't qualify as the best bit on the bench. Although I'm glad that I've got it. The other things
it sounds like a slightly disappointing bit on the bench. If I'm honest, mate, I think that might.
I think I was aware of the potential limitations of it before I got it. I haven't cut it up yet because I'm thinking, gosh, if I cut it wrong, I'm never going to be able to get it right. Anyway, but we'll make use of it, I'm sure. The other thing that I got recently that reminded me of the good fun you can have with the Artisan Thrilling Tales range. I wanted to get some dismounted recce guys, and of course in there they've got various people who would pass as being blokes that have just got out of a Humber armour car or something like that. So they've got guys wearing that lovely sort of leather waistcoat. I don't know what the word is for.
Jerkin.
That's
type
the one.
Thing,
they've got a couple of guys wearing that, carrying a Sten gun. A kind of informal look.
That is a fabulous little range, isn't it? You can find all sorts of bits and pieces. So from Malaya, I've got an Indian officer, I've got an Indian NCO, I've got a British colonial type in a pith helmet. It's a fabulous range.
Yeah, just
good.
Nice to add those little tweaks around the edges. So I've got some more of those, which is lovely. But I think from my candidate for best bit on the bench comes from Rubicon, and Rubicon have a range, or they have a kit which is street furniture or household furniture.
Right.
So it's a 1/56 scale kit, contains 2 sprues. It's like their British and German stowage pack.
Right.
And you get 2 identical sprues.
But furniture.
Right. So you get an outdoor cafeteria style table with outdoor style sort of wrought iron chairs. There's a wardrobe, there's a bed.
That's the wardrobe that Sid's hiding in.
That's the wardrobe that Sidney's hiding in. If you've seen the famous photo that Gareth Beamish put together on the of Sid's little face peeking out of the wardrobe. Looks splendid. And that's a really nice looking kit. What impressed me about it is how crisp it is. And it's lovely to get this stuff. I think for doing some buildings that are rubble, that have been ruined. I just want to make sure that there's some stuff in the ruins, in the rubble, that makes it look like it once was a house.
Oh, that's nice, because I bought some Doll's House stuff, which looks good, but
yes,
it does look a bit Doll's House-y.
Yeah.
Some bits do.
Yeah.
So that will be nice. That will be really good.
I picked up some Charlie Foxtrot beds as well. So I've got a sort of mix of beds that could be strewn amongst the rubble.
They're very Tracy Emin, aren't they? They're sort of unmade beds.
One of them, the one that I've got, one that's very well made actually.
Really?
Reminds me of my grandma's bed with a little patchwork quilt on it.
Right. Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
That's
About as far apart from Tracy Emin's
Grandma,
bed.
what big eyes you've got, I used to say to her.
You'll be able to get in it when you get coronavirus.
That's true.
Wrap up warm. Right.
But not with her, because she's been dead for 30 years.
That's reassuring to know. All right. What about you, Grabbers? What have you been up to?
Well, I've been painting quite a bit.
Well, French people. Yeah, you did tell us that.
I did tell you French people.
Tell us anything interesting, not that boring stuff you've already told us.
So, one of the things that a lot of people do is gloss varnish their miniatures first, and then they put a matte varnish on it.
I do that. That's called normal behaviour.
That's normal behaviour. I've always sort of wondered about finding a really, really good matte varnish to really matte down the gloss.
Oh, I've got one.
There is one. It's called Tester's Dark Coat.
No, doesn't work for me. That goes satin for me.
Well, I found one, and I think it's absolutely fantastic. So this is from AK. It's the Ultra Varnish Matte.
That sounds expensive.
It was £5.49 for quite a large sort of bottle. It's about sort of I haven't got it here, so 70ml I would say.
What's that in English?
It's a larger. It's bigger than the Vallejo ones. It's about twice as big as the Vallejo bottle.
Is that kind of deodorant bottle size? Is it?
Not quite as big as a deodorant bottle, but it comes in a dropper. And it really mattes things down, so they are just completely ultra super matte.
You paint it on?
And I've been painting it on. I've just been putting a little bit onto a palette and then just painting it on.
With a brush?
With a brush.
Do you add water?
No water added. And then using it sparingly. Yeah. So I brush a lot of... So if you've got a little palette with a depression in it, and you put the varnish in the depression, load up the brush, and then you almost make sure that the brush is almost kind of like to a dry brush level, and then you paint that onto the gloss. I've found that gives really good results. Really, really good results.
That's really worth knowing, because I like my figures to be very matte.
I was going to bring it in, but then I thought, well, I'm in the car. So next time we do it, I'll bring some along, and we can test it. We can have a little practical test. I'll bring in some of the Winsor & Newton Galeria varnish, which dries in about 5 minutes.
I've used that before with mixed results, if I'm honest. You recommended that before.
Yeah, you've got to shake it a lot. You've got to really shake that one.
But I'm just hoping you're not selling us another pony here.
Well, I think using
like the flow improver.
Well, come on to that. No, come on to that in a minute. So if you use the Galeria plus this Ultra Varnish matte, then they are coming out as matte as anything. Right. But we will test that next time.
I realised, Rich, what we can do with the flow improver, we can use it to clean our hands.
I swear by the flow improver, but I have also been using, in addition to the AK Ultra Varnish matte, I've been using Vallejo Glaze Medium. So there's various different ways to give your patinas, or your sort of basically your washers. So you can make your own patina, or you can go to an army painter, or you can go inks or whatever like that. I always find with those that you lose a bit of control, and when you're diluting the inks, they don't quite have the same sort of flow. But what I have been trying is just normal paint with Vallejo glaze. So the glaze is a sort of drying retarder, So you can mix that in with some of the paint, and it gives a beautiful sort of transparent glaze which you can put over uniforms very, very quickly. You get a lot done with that.
So is this like that queer paint that we talked about before? Contrast paint.
A little bit like that, but you're going for transparency, so you've got it over a base colour and you're just doing a wash. So you could do it with an ink, but this gives more control than an ink, because you're essentially diluting it, but in a way that keeps the paint being transparent, as opposed to just adding water and then there's some separation.
Yeah.
So that was only $2.79 for a bottle, and
$2.79? Only $2.79 at Furniture Land.
You truly are the alchemist of this group, aren't you?
So I've really enjoyed using that, and so next time we have an Oddcast, I'll bring in a couple of figures and I'll show you.
We can glaze them.
We can all glaze together.
I think we might be glazing over, Nick.
I can feel something pushing against me. I think it could be a word from our sponsors coming up.
I think you're right, because I tell you what's right ahead of me now, mate. It's coffee.
Golden
Starbucks. It's the ungolden green Starbucks sign. So while we're getting our caffeine boost for the morning, let's hear from our sponsors.
From the makers of Chain of Command comes a tale of drama.
Mon capitaine, les Anglais servent on the bridge. So it seems we shall meet again, Captain Fondleo.
A tale of action.
That's it, lads.
Sacre bleu.
Give 'em another volley, they're falling back. Remember, 3 rounds a minute.
A tale of romance.
But Mr. Fondleo, you are so prominent.
For large skirmishes in the era of black powder, where the story ends, sharp practice begins.
So welcome back, and fortified with our coffee, we can move on to the big issue for this podcast. We had a letter recently from Dave in Suffolk, England. Dave's a big sharp practice player and says one of his great joys is to build lists for armies that he's yet to acquire. Apparently, according to Dave, the best lists that really catch his imagination end up on his shopping list.
Yeah.
And what Dave asks is specifically...
Let's hope he's not selecting any toilet rolls and rice then.
No, because Dave's question is, could I ask the panel, when selecting forces for an army or for a game, do they tend to go with quality or quantity?
Oh.
Well, that's a cracking question, Dave from Suffolk.
This is a bit like saying, what would you rather fight? 1 horse-sized duck or a dozen duck-sized horses?
No. 1 horse-sized duck or 1 duck-sized horse. No, that can't work.
No, that's ridiculous.
I was right first time.
Yeah.
Would you rather fight the Romans, or would you rather fight the Iberian hundreds and thousands of tribes?
That's not what it's about either, is it, really? It's about, would you rather have 1 tiger tank or 4 Shermans?
Oh, right. The Barkman Corner.
Yeah, what would you rather have? Quality. What would you rather have? 300 Spartans or 10,000 Persians?
Well, based on Leonidas's experiences of that, I think I'd rather have the Persians. It's an interesting one, isn't it, actually? And one of the things that I find interesting about the question of quality and quantity is to look at how different military forces handle that. So, for example, the Germans in both the First World War and Second World War were obviously very short of resources. So what they tended to do was they tended to go for units with variable quality. So you would have fortress divisions, which were not capable of offensive action, but which were capable of holding their ground. And then you would have fire brigade type units, which had the better kit and were capable of launching offensives, but also, more importantly, counterattacks. So you had that concept of elastic defence, where your front line would be held by poor quality and poor equipped troops, But when the enemy pushed into your defences, your defence would snap back into place like an elastic band, because you'd used better quality troops stationed behind the lines to counter-attack and restore the position. So you kind of get that in history when you look at the Romans, where they're attempting to use high quality formations under Caesar, and the auxiliary troops are not auxiliary troops as you get in the very end of the Republic and the early Empire, where they're regimented units serving within a Roman structure. These guys are just tribal allies who come along, and it's interesting how you get that variety in different armies. Whereas when you're taking the British Army and the US Army, you would tend to their objective would tend to be to create a sort of homogenous army where all battalions, regiments, whatever, could be called upon to undertake the same tasks. Very different to the way the Germans did it. What do I prefer? I don't know. It's interesting actually. For my army, for sharp practice, funnily enough, based on, is it Dave?
Dave, it is Dave.
So based on Dave's question, I've selected a force to take with me to Amsterdam this year, which is a mixture of some really high quality light infantry and some line landwehr. Because of the points limitation, I didn't have enough points, because I really wanted the high quality Austrian Jaeger with their rifled muskets, their rifles. I didn't have enough points for my regular Austrian line troops, so I went with the landwehr to fulfil that role. I suppose that is a case of me wanting the elites, because I was quite prepared to downgrade the choice of line troops in order to get the best troops with their rifles.
Do you know the kind of situation that you're going to be fighting in?
I haven't got a clue. I've no idea.
So you've had to take sort of middle of the road. You've got a bit of both, haven't you? You've got a bit of cheap quantity of militia, and a bit of quality in there.
Yeah.
So that's the tough thing, isn't it? And quality is, what's the higher quality? A cheap carrier bag or a leather suitcase. Well, it depends what you want to put in it, doesn't it? If I want to put a pound of potatoes,
gin.
I'd rather have the carrier bag.
Gin.
Yeah, gin. This is the tough thing.
If you're Alan from Air, you use a suitcase.
Small portable suitcase.
Yeah.
So quality is a moving target, isn't it? What represents quality?
That's an interesting point, isn't it? Because when you look at things like anti-tank weapons in chain of command,
Yes.
Are you buying a suitcase or a plastic bag when you buy that support option? Well, if the enemy's got tanks, you potentially just bought a top of the range suitcase because it's perfect for the job. But if the enemy doesn't have tanks, you potentially bought a plastic bag because it's got very little purpose and very little value.
And the quality versus quantity. So my mind went to Kiss Me Hardy, where you've British naval Napoleonics. You've very clearly got an option there between British perceptions and of high quality, battle hardened, seasoned crews, maybe taking on crews of lesser quality. Ships are fairly similar because of course ships are being captured and changing sides as they're being put to use by whatever nation holds them at the time.
But that wasn't.
You still got 2-1. You've got Nelson at Trafalgar with 30 versus whatever it was.
But that wasn't an issue of doctrine. The British didn't train harder than the French. It was just that the British were on blockade, and therefore their crews became much more experienced.
I think that's a longer conversation itself, because individual captains would train their crews differently.
Well, that's true.
Some French crews, as we know, you have a higher quality crew that you could go for there too. So,
well, ultimately, they'd largely been trapped in port, hadn't they? Therefore, their ability to drill was restricted by the fact that they were under blockade.
But I think it's a difficult one, is the Napoleonic naval, because it's quality and quantity, which the British have. They have commanders, they have ships, they have men, and they have a strategic advantage as well.
Most of the time, they are outnumbered in actions that they fight. Most of the time, the odds are 2-1.
But the British advantages of strategic doctrine, tactical ability, command, morale, and experience. I mean, so overwhelm those quantitative advantages which the Spanish and French have. For instance, at Trafalgar. I mean, it's extraordinarily difficult, as we know from our refight. It's extraordinarily difficult for the combined fleet to really have any traction at all there.
You were saying that because you played the French Admiral and you lost.
I did better than Villeneuve did. I hold that to myself, but it's a really tough one for the French and the Spanish.
I thought he lost and you lost. So in what way did you do better?
Well, I did better. Sunk some British ships.
Sydney didn't meet a mysterious end.
And I didn't kill myself in a hotel room with a dagger. So I consider that.
Not yet. We are going to Southampton, mate.
We are staying in the Holiday Inn. Yeah. So who knows what might happen.
Sydney round in the ballroom with the dagger. So I think the whole thing about quality quantity is a really tough one. But so look at actions like Rorke's Drift, right? So is Rorke's Drift quality versus quantity?
No.
Exactly.
Because if I, well, you know, those Zulu warriors, they were supreme warriors.
They were. But look at any point system in the world.
But it's almost whatever happens, we have got the maximum gun and they have not, type of thing. Yeah. We have the technology that they could run all day and all night to get from their home in KwaZulu-Natal.
But in that situation, in Rorke's Drift, one of the things that you don't reflect necessarily in a traditional point system is the fact that the key thing there for the British is that they're defending a building.
Well, hang on, you're right, Sid, and the terrain therefore doesn't feature into it. But we made the connection between quality, quantity, and points.
Okay.
Haven't we? Which we're kind of saying that
we've kind of jumped in there, haven't we?
Yeah, well,
points.
You can use points to do this.
You haven't found a document on an old scrap heap by Mr. S. Ninner.
SK Ninner.
SK, yeah.
Or something like
right,
that.
or something like that.
SKIN Ner.
Oh, yeah, right, okay, yeah, we get the point. I think you're labouring it now.
So back in the day, when we first maybe started wargaming, most of the so-called big sets of rules which would be picked up might well have a point system in there. It's because you'd be able to play them for competitions and it would be all fair, and in the evolving world of the 1980s or 1990s you'd have a point system and you'd select your troops from a point system. And then we kind of moved away from that, and in a way it's interesting that one of the things I know you're thinking about, Rich, is you're thinking of actually finalising a point system for infamy. Now I know that's a bit of a hoary old chestnut, and that's something we've kind of avoided in polite society, but maybe when we're thinking about quality and quantity, what's the transition between that in a scenario and a point system?
It's interesting, isn't it? Because a point system is quite a difficult thing to create, largely because you're trying to create an all-purpose tool that actually needs to have many more than a single purpose. I mean, I've always long been of the opinion that a points system is daft. However, I have come to the conclusion that in terms of an aid towards creating scenarios, the point system does help. But what you have to recognise is that it's going to have strengths and weaknesses. Now, one of the things I've found interesting about creating point systems, you know, we've got the calculator for chain of command, we've got the sharpulator for sharp practice, and I suppose we're now going to have the informator, or whatever it's going to be called for infamy. But it's interesting how you can get units that have very similar point values but which do very, very different things. It's a bit like a Swiss Army knife. You know, the tool for getting stones out of horses' hooves is great for getting stones out of horses' hooves, but it's bloody useless if you want to cut up a piece of paper, whereas the scissors, vice versa. So there's always a bit of a conundrum in terms of creating a point system. I mean, the way that I started it off was to say, right, what is the combat value of that group? because I based it not on individual figures but on a group of figures. So let's say, for example, if you've got a group of 10 warriors, they tend to roll 8 dice. So at the start point in the equation is going to be the figure 8. If you've got 8 Roman warriors, they would tend to roll 10 dice. Not always, because if they're in broken ground and consequently their drill has been a bit interfered with, they're only going to roll 8 dice. But the majority of the time, and that's where you need to start from, they're going to be rolling 10 dice. So again, you can then look at that and go, okay, well, do I start with 8 points and 10 points? The issue there is that what armour have you got then? So it's not just the ability to cause damage on an enemy, you've got to take into account the ability to withstand damage on the unit. So what is the longevity of that unit in combat? How long can it stand there and take damage? So the next figure in the equation has got to be one based on what their resilience is. So, for example, if you take lightly armed Germanic warriors who've just come out of their swamp in Infamy, they've only got light armour. Their armour save is a 6, whereas Romans, their armour save is a 4, 5 or 6 if we're talking about Roman legionaries with a full scutum and all their lorica segmenta and this, that and the other. So you've got a fact that the Roman legionaries will last 3 times as long as the German warriors. But of course you haven't, because the German warriors are in groups of 10 and the Roman legionaries are in groups of 8. So you've got to then factor into the second figure into the equation how many figures are in the unit. But then you look at that and you say, okay, well let's give them a figure for that. But that again doesn't tell the whole story, because what about things like ranged fire? Now, yes, your Romans legionaries can chuck their pillar 6 inches, which is a great thing to be able to do when the enemy are charging at you, and you do definitely have to take that into account. But what about those slingers who can stand over there at 24 inches and who are very nimble? So that you've got to give them an enhanced figure for having an enhanced range. You've got to take into account the fact that their slings can actually downgrade the enemy's armour. So I think the key thing there is that whatever points you allocate to units, however much you can say they're good in close combat and they've got such and such armour, you've got to take into account the fact that some units might be extremely good at ranged missile fire and therefore have a good point value because of that, even though they've got no real capability in close combat. Equally, you might have troops who are fabulous in close combat but have no ranged missile fire at all. So you have to, whilst you can attach all these numerical values to things, you have to take into account how those troops perform in battle, in our games, and consequently the point system that emerges has got to have some solid basis in numbers, but equally it's got to be a judgmental thing at some point. So I think the thing I'm trying to say is that when you're looking at quality and quantity, some troops are numerous but great in certain situations. Other troops are great in other situations. So it's rather like going back to, you don't paint a wall with a hammer, you don't knock a nail in with a brush.
Can I slightly play devil's advocate on this?
Oh, not again!
Because I liked doing that last time.
Yeah.
But you nearly got punched in the face then.
You did, and we've had complaints asking
I'm sure
where
you
you learned. We have asking whether you got your interviewing technique from Piers Morgan.
Oh God! What you just said took me back to, I'm going to say 1990. It didn't take me back to Paradise City. But it took me back to 1992,
right?
When I was looking down lists of Polish 17th century armies and working out which lance went with an axe, a Panzerstecher sword, and 2 pistols. Because as a Roman centurion or as a Roman senator or whoever's commanding the legion, or I don't know, you're not going to be thinking of that. You're going to be thinking, I've got so many sesterces, and I need to spend them wisely. And I need wait, hang on. And I need to get my men to a particular place, and I need to make sure they're fed and they're clothed, and they fight okay.
Yes.
Because you're thinking in units.
Yes.
You're not thinking in the granularity of those tactical interfaces, which do happen. They're just part of your training. You've got a unit. Now, one of the things that I've been having a look through the loft and getting at some of the old War Games room rules, and I seem to have just been collecting War Games rules for like 30 years, and I was looking at one called Forlorn Hope from the English Civil War, which Pete Berry wrote, and they've got a really interesting army building system there for the games. You buy your units essentially, and then you roll for the quality of the units, the size and the training, so it's kind of unpredictable, but you also know broadly who's going to turn up, but because it's not a sort of a modern professional army, you're not quite sure who's going to bring your forces along.
Absolutely right, and equally it's not an ancient professional army like the Romans. What I'm not saying here is this is what every gamer has to do when putting together their force. What I'm saying here is, as a game designer, in order to give the players a point system which allows them to then choose forces which have a feel of being relatively balanced, and of course we've got the caveat which you touched on, which I'd like to come back to, about what about the terrain, but in order to work out a system of points, I have to go through this horrific process as a game designer so that people then do have a point system that's plausible. I don't expect anybody playing the game to have to go through this.
So can I put something else in there, though?
Which way am I going here?
You're going... you've got to watch it here because it's...
I'm going this way.
Yeah. We're just at this part of the motorway where it splits, and...
Both roads say Southampton.
Yeah, Purgatory one way and something else, Sodom and Gomorrah the other.
Yeah.
Well, the question there for me is, you can create point lists, you can create points lists, but it's whether you allow players to choose freely from those points lists. For instance, if you do, what you tend to get is that people will choose units that are ahistorical, things that didn't go together, to create a force that wins them the game.
Well, that's
points balanced. You know, look at how many Napoleonic French armies include units of Imperial Guard. For instance.
I totally agree.
I find that really hard
and without taking into account the fact that if you had the Imperial Guard are not just there to fight, they are also the guarantor of power politically, and you cannot spend them on the battlefield when you need to have them to ensure your regime continues to exist.
Well, that goes back to your quality and quantity point, doesn't it?
It does, but
that's what Dave would like us to do, surely.
Yes, but let me also take up your point, Nick. What I'm not doing is saying to people, here's a point list. This unit of legionaries costs 10 points. This unit of hairy Gallic people costs 8 points. This unit of Boadicea in a chariot costs 14 points. Go away and pick what you want. What we're doing, and we do this with sharp practice, is to say, here's your core list. This is the core of a plausible force. Now go away and tell me what you want to add on to that. So if you've got a Roman legionary force, early Imperial Roman legionary, your core force is likely to be 4 groups of 8 Roman legionaries, 1 group of 8 auxilia, 1 group of 6 allied slingers, and then what do you want to add on top of that? Well, you might decide, I want to take some scouts because I want to know what's ahead of me. They don't even play any part in the game other than the initial what we could call a patrol phase, although it's very different to the patrol phase. But you might decide you want to take some Gallic cavalry because you want a bit of hard-hitting punch, or you might decide you want to take some tribal allies because you want people who know the local ground. So what we hope, therefore, comes out at the end of that is a plausible force, because the core force is what makes it sensible, if you like. So people are not, what do they call, maxing out their lists.
Min-max.
Yeah, that's the term you're looking for, mate. Well done.
Well, it's like a lot of things, isn't it? It's a tool, isn't it? And you can use it if you want, and you don't need to use it. And it helps people when they're building up their base armies and getting started, as much as anything else.
So let's touch briefly on the terrain question, because I see on the sat-nav that we're getting close to our destination. So presumably we're going to have to time the end of our conversation with the end of our journey.
We're doing fine.
Unless we sit outside of Mark's event all morning.
Yeah.
Talking to
Well, I think people have had enough of you already.
Yeah. So tell me about the terrain piece then. Tell me how that works.
Well, that's,
oh, man of 1,000 wise words.
Yeah. That's you.
Oh, is that me?
Yeah. You're the smart ass around here, not me.
If you've got an army which is essentially engaging in a fortress type warfare, they've built entrenchments, or they've surrounded themselves, they've showed their freeze, or they're turning up to the engagement in portable in sort of wagons like a Goulet Grande or whatever it is, then you're going to have to pay some cost for that, and the scenario is designed around it that you're essentially defending as the prime objective as your sort of tactical engagement.
How do you cost that into your...
Well, certain rules have costed it, haven't they? They've actually put a points value on that.
Not many. I saw a video on YouTube of some wargamers playing Chain of Command, and they were playing a scenario where the Germans were in a village looking out over fields, and the American force had to run across the fields to attack the village. And funnily enough, they got shot to bits. And I thought, I don't really even understand how you thought that was a good game to put on.
A balanced game in terms of force?
I guess it was a balanced game in terms of forces, but it didn't take into account the fact the Germans were all in windows, firing out of buildings, and the Americans were running across an open field.
But you've got to balance that with the points. I mean, are you going to ascribe a particular...
How much per building?
Well, you're not. I wouldn't want to do it like that.
No.
But you have to level your own argument back at you there, though, because there is something about how do you assault over open ground into that kind of... There is to use the arguments we were making last time about balanced versus unwinnable games.
Yeah.
There is something else about that does make that game playable.
But if you've got an army
isn't about points.
if you've got an army which only took the field in a set battle type situation, because remembering throughout history until the 19th, 20th century, you didn't fight unless you really had to or wanted to. Yep. If you're in a situation that you don't take the field unless you fortify yourself, if you're an infantry army, say against a cavalry army, then it is entirely sensible that you do build into your point system the cost of those prepared defences, because otherwise you do have a situation that you're without Rorke's Drift's buildings. You are, as the British, out there, albeit with your Martini Henrys, you're just going to be mown down by the impies, aren't you?
Well, I guess you need a drink in that situation.
You would.
But
Any kind of martini.
any time, any place, anywhere.
Henry, I didn't even know Henry drank martini.
I mean, what I've seen some rules do is that, especially in the sort of smaller scales, you pay certain points to have villages which could anchor your line, or wood, or a patch of soft ground or marsh. And that's entirely consistent with what generals throughout history have tried to do. They've tried to anchor their flanks when they've been weak in cavalry, for instance.
Well, actually, look at the Romans taking on Boudica, the Battle of Watling Street, which apparently, the Romans were facing 12-1 odds, but they anchored both flanks on woodland, and the
Henry V.
Well, you can
Agincourt.
That's right. There are many examples, aren't there? And certainly one of the things that we find that when we've been play testing Infamy is that as a Roman, you need to take into account the terrain. You need to protect your flanks because your force is likely to be numerically inferior to the barbarians who you're up against. It's just a simple matter of fact that. So you do have to use terrain to your advantage. However, whether you can actually cost every pile of rocks which will break up a hairy barbarian charge as it comes in on your flank, I think is quite difficult to do, because the table might have several mounds of this rocky ground or swampy ground which you can use to protect your flanks, but it doesn't mean to say the Roman commander's going to use it.
Yeah, but aren't you going to say, well, if you're going to suggest an equal points for an open battle, say 100 a side, whatever the points is, if you've got one side which can take advantage of prepared terrain, you might say, well, 75 or 50 to one side and 100 to the other.
I actually don't think you can point up terrain, but I do think what you have to do is use judgment and go, oh look, these guys are defending, let's say, Rorke's Drift, therefore the odds have got to be 2 to 1, if not 3 to 1. I mean, I tend to look at it and say, the technical manuals say that the attacker needs a strength of 3 against 1, and you think, okay, well, if I give them 2 against 1, it's up to them to then try and create the local superiority on the table that allows them to have 3 against 1 at that point, or even just give them a 3-2. How they then achieve localised superiority is an important part of their role.
Well, that's been really interesting. So what we should do, I think, is extend that quality versus quantity question to some of the gamers present at Southampton.
Wow.
We can do that, but I want to make another point as well about it before we move on. Sorry, Sid.
Sorry, sir.
Because I think there's another aspect of Dave's question. Dave, yeah?
Yeah.
And that's about when we as wargamers buy stuff, do we buy the quality troops or do we buy the quantity troops? You know, for instance, how many of us make sure that we buy up and paint that little elite unit, because it's more interesting and more fun to paint the little elite unit than it is to paint 200 versions of the bog standard infantry. And I think that's another aspect of the wargaming part of quality versus quantity.
I think that's an interesting point. For example, I know at the Great Big Waterloo game that they did in Glasgow, you know, you had several incarnations of the old guard because that's what people like to paint. And nothing wrong with that.
Well, 95th rifles, you know, 95th rifles. Yeah. There's probably more units than 95th rifles in miniature than, you know.
But there is another dimension of that question is, to what extent is elite really elite?
Don't go there,
but that is a question for another day. Because I think we're running short of time.
But what would you rather fight? 1 horse-sized duck or a dozen duck-sized horses? Sidney, what would you rather fight?
A dozen duck-sized horses.
So quality or quantity? Is that quantity? That's quantity, is it?
That's quality.
I think a duck is possibly more aggressive than a horse.
Yeah, a horse.
They've got that big beak.
I wouldn't want to fight a horse-sized duck.
That would be, well, that's why I didn't.
That's what I mean. That would be horrific.
So isn't that quality? Isn't that one big?
I don't know.
But it's what you want to fight, though, isn't it?
How do you perceive quality in terms of ducks and horses? See, I reckon a dozen duck-sized horses, you could start treading on them one at a time. They'd be ganging up on you, and you could pick them up and throw them away. So you're
saying you don't mind fighting quantity because you can stamp on your duck-sized horses.
So what would you rather have, 1 tiger or 4 Shermans?
Where are the animals?
Exactly.
Oh yeah. Well, I'll have. What would I rather have? I'd probably rather have 4 Shermans. Certainly, our experiences of Barkman Corner Overdrive games playing that suggests that the Germans can just about cope with 3-1, but can't cope with 4-1.
4-1 is very difficult.
If you extend that to the Second World War, then
that is the Second World War.
Well, but I mean, Shermans and T-34s,
T-34s,
mass-reduced armour, wins the day over arguably high quality in inverted commas.
Yeah. Over-engineered
bits of kit. Look at fighter combat as well. Look at, what would you rather have, Spitfires or Hurricanes? 1 squadron of Spitfires or 2 squadrons of Hurricanes? Yeah, some of these questions can go on and on all day, and maybe that's what we should do, Sid. Ask them to people all day.
So let's hear what they say.
Right, okay. That's great. Good starter. Okay, here we are around the table at Southampton somewhere. I've got a whole load of people around the table. They can introduce themselves. We're going to talk about quantity versus quality. Sidney's here as well.
Yes.
Sidney, tell us what that's all about.
So we're going to be talking about quantity versus quality in choosing your forces for wargame. So if you're looking to have your ideal wargaming scenario, what do you want? Do you want a really quality, professional, niche force? Or do you want to have lots and lots of stuff? Lots of levy and routine line infantry, lots of Shermans. So what would you go for? And I'm going to go around that table with more than just a one-word answer. Starting with... I'm going to go with... Quality or quantity?
Both. Can I have both?
You can't have both. What a ridiculous answer. That's hopeless. Charlie.
I do have a sensible answer, but
we'll come back to you, sir.
Unfortunately, that was my answer too. Having just played a game that had some really high quality troops and some levy in it, I thought that was good. That gave some diversity.
So you're a balanced man. You're kind of on the fence in that regard.
That might be strong to call me balanced, but certainly the kind of force I would like to use. Yeah.
All right, Colin. What about you?
I tend to go for mostly cheap crap infantry.
And why do you go for cheap crap infantry?
I like to hoard into people's faces.
So pin and outflank.
Yeah, lots of numbers at them, confuse them, and
Yeah.
So you'd rather have a big line of militia and a couple of units of sharpshooters?
Yeah, I like playing Russians in World War II, for instance, and having lots of infantry running at you. Too many targets to concentrate on, that kind of thing.
Swamp the enemy.
Swamp the enemy, yeah, exactly.
So you're going for immobility, big plans rather than niche sort of deployment and careful manoeuvring.
Yeah.
Okay, I like that. Fraser, what about you, sir?
I actually, as a person, prefer quality over quantity, but taking this from a game perspective, quality doesn't always shine in the way it should. So what I mean by that is, in a lot of games, more dice wins. So you have the potential of rolling 6 sixes if you've got 6 dice. If you've only got 3 dice, even if they come up 6s, you still don't have the same kind of effect.
So you're going to be more disappointed if it doesn't come out. If
it's not so much the disappointed. I find that if you have more units or more dice, that will affect your game and your level of success. So from a gaming perspective, quantity. From a personal perspective, quality.
Fantastic. I'm going to go to Sean next. Come on, Sean.
I think Fraser just stole my answer.
Game.
Even though I know that most games quantity outweighs quality, for the reason Fraser said, I still prefer playing with quality, elite, disciplined units.
You can do more with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're more likely to do what you want to do.
Yeah.
And also have all the kit, have all the toys.
So you can have.
I like the chrome.
You can have all the chrome, and you can have all the cool toys.
Yeah.
And the only thing is, once you lose one of them, you're feeling a bit downhearted when you've been overrun by somebody's Russians or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that never happens. So going back to Al.
With my painting and collecting hat on, I'd say quality, because often they're the most interesting things to paint and to collect and put on your shelf and stuff. But in a purely tactical gaming sense, I guess I prefer flexibility, and generally that comes with numbers and more units rather than the one Tiger tank sitting in the middle that draws a lot of attention and then will inevitably get blown up very quickly. We just played a game, a Maori game, Sharp Practice, and we were going to choose a cannon in that, and we didn't because we thought it's going to need that flexibility, and that worked out. Even though it was a draw, I think we'd have lost if we'd taken the gun instead of more troops.
Yeah. So what's the temptation when you're sort of putting an army together and you're sort of doing a campaign? Is it the same sort of thing, do you think? Sort of, are you going to sort of try and get more of a balance, or are you really sort of more focused on trying to sort of work out strategy and go for it? Or is it just that quality quantity comes through on a tabletop? In a campaign, are you going to be more balanced, do you think?
See, at the moment, I tend to be doing both sides for games. So I end up doing one that would have the quality troops and one that might have the quantity. So the game Matt and I played this morning, for instance, we had British infantry versus Afghan tribesmen, and the difference really showed during the game. They acted very differently to each other, but the game swung back and forward, and it could have gone either way with both sides.
And Matt, as you, as a man who is used to a paintbrush, as painting lots of things, you could turn out quality and quantity in a great deal of quantity all the time. Must be tempting just to flood the table.
I think I like games like Collins this morning, where you've got two very different styles, and then it's a tribute to a set of rules that can handle such different styles of troops. My only, what I would call elite force for World War II, are Belgian chasseurs. So they're not very elite, but I tend to always start with the basic bog standard line guys who did the bulk of the fighting rather than the glory boys. But in the game this morning, as the British, you did feel very much under pressure. You knew that you were better quality, but being able to get that quality in the right place at the right time when there's hordes of Afghans flowing all over the table is a real challenge.
It's difficult.
Yeah. So I like the challenge of the smaller elite force up against the sort of bigger forces, the more irregular forces. But I also like playing the irregular forces as well, because if you lose one unit, you're not too devastated. You can almost afford to throw them in, although I did that with the Sikhs this morning. My poor Sikhs were getting thrown into all sorts of terrible situations. But so I think from a game point of view, I like a mix of both. I wouldn't want to see British Paras against SS. I wouldn't enjoy that game. However, a very small, isolated unit of Paras or SS against a more regular, overwhelming force.
So you're not into the Battle of the Titans, or so-called Titans. You're into a balanced,
no. I like the mix.
Symmetrical game.
Yeah.
It's very good. And how about your views? And
I like the Elite Force.
Yeah.
Mostly. Because it's more realistic to paint. I don't have to paint that
smaller,
many.
That's what we're saying. Smaller and quicker.
Yeah.
And there's often more information, isn't there? You know, if you're sort of picking a sort of famous regiment as opposed to sort of a bunch of militia, you're going to have the information there, aren't you?
But I like painting, so really drew me into the hobby. So
well, you know, you start with Elite, and you'll be ending up with quality once you're going on to your 15th army or something like that.
Yeah.
What about you, Ralph? You're sitting there, standing there.
He was on last time.
Just going back to what Matt was saying about the asymmetric forces, I think the new game Infamy is going to give us some interesting choices, because you've got what's ostensibly a small elite force in the Romans facing a big mob of Harys. But those Harys have got to spend some time getting themselves ready before they can put everything in place. And they've always got the option of ambushing from different positions around the table. So although they outnumber the Romans, it's not a traditional swamping force as such. And the Romans fight, obviously, with their drill. So they've got to be very cautious and selective about when they use their options.
That's a beautiful, beautiful segue to go back to the Oddcast and talk to the author, Richard Clark, to see if he disagrees with all of us. Well, that was some great audio there from the friends of ours at Come and Have a Go If You Think You're Lard Enough.
They weren't your friends, Sid. They despised you. And your Piers Morgan interviewing style.
Yeah, you spreading coronavirus.
Yeah.
Well, it's just my trip to Milan. Let's not talk about that. Anyway, don't forget, looking ahead, that Hammerhead 2020 is next weekend at the Newark Showground.
Yeah,
we won't be there, sadly, but the Harrogate Wargames Club will be running Infamy. So that's well worth a visit for those who are keen to see what that's got in store.
And that must be John Savage and the boys, is it?
John Savage and the boys.
It's John Savage and the boys.
And Rich, I know you're preparing for Sharp Practice Day in Amsterdam. I hope you're packing your stunt liver for that one, sir.
I've got a couple lined up, yeah.
And of course, Salute is looming large next month.
Yeah, or is it? Yeah.
So
we'll see.
Another point at which the show might look suitably. We might be on.
What are you saying, man? Just spit it out.
I was trying to. Well, it doesn't really matter. But Sulu's coming.
Try playing devil's advocate. You're good.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, why not?
Yeah,
why not?
Argumentative shit.
And also Warlord in Durham. So lots on the Lard calendar.
Yeah. Is this the right room for an argument?
I was distracted there by your driving.
Full half hour. What? This is not where we're meant to be.
That's why I was distracted. Okay, and a quick shout out to our great friend as we almost crash into a Mercedes.
No, I think you find the Mercedes almost crashed into us, Sid.
Yeah,
there's a
great.
difference.
This is definitely not where we're meant to be.
That's because we've gone to the Holiday Inn, because you said, where were we going?
Oh, you're taking us to the hotel, you
That's
dipstick.
what you asked. Okay, well, it's a good shout out to our great friend of Lard, Bob Connor, down in Exeter, who's been poorly. So, from all of us, genuinely and very sincerely, get well soon, Bob.
Get well soon, Bob.
And that's from all of us today. So, thank you for joining us, and cheerio.
Goodbye.
Bye, goodbye. Muppet, why have you brought us here?
Where are we?
We're at the hotel. What's the address of the place? You told... No, I didn't want the hotel address. I asked what the address of the show was.
No, where have you brought
What do you mean you've got no idea? Look it up.
I haven't got the email.